Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler, on this 23rd day of February. Got a good show on tonight. Bobby Wagner released from the Rams. Look like the Rams are in a transition of a slight retool. I don't know if I'd call it rebuilding, but there was a story out today with The Athletic about Sean McVay and the stress he's been under. I'll talk about that, plus the XFL. Comment on that. They're coming into week 2, not looking so good ratings wise. I'll talk about that. And of course, the big story here, Brandon Miller. I wanted to make sure and get all the information about the Alabama player who now we know actually took the gun to the other player. Was it Darius Miles or whatever, that actually brought the gun to him, that was involved in the shooting of the young lady. And I'll tell you, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for more. I'm more disappointed in Alabama and the way they handled it than I am the player himself. Go ahead and take a minute 19 break here, and we'll get started here on Sports Scope. Hello, Sports Scope followers. After 5 years of doing this program once a week, balancing a 60-hour work week job, I've decided to do the program 5 days a week, 1 hour a night, taking a significant pay cut. So I've started a Patreon page, which is Patreon, Patreon/SportsScope, spelled the same way at the bottom of the screen you see there, for $5 a month, 17 cents a day. You can help support the program. You ask yourself, why Sports Scope? Well, I bring in such big names such as Al Borges, former Auburn offensive coordinator, and I cover the big news in sports that the corporate media will not cover. If you want to contribute more than $5 a month, you can go use the Cash App. The cash tag is Sports Scope, again spelled the same way, or you can go to the Zelle app, sportscope@gmail.com. SportsScope has about 5,000 followers and growing. If you want to advertise on the program, you can email me. The word is SportsScope, spelled the same way again, @gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the program. All righty then, I'm back here on All Lanes. Carlos says, I'll tell you what, Carlos, we'll put that in as one of the questions tomorrow. Get your full opinion and context there on tomorrow's program. Alabama situation is a mess. Now, I'll say this, folks, that, I brought Jeffrey Deskovic on the program a few weeks ago, brought him back last week. Jeffrey was wrongfully accused of murder and rape and did 16 years in prison. And the guy sued, wrongfully convicted. Now, he sued the state and got a $25 million settlement, take home of $15 million. I understand that you really have to be, careful, not rush to judgment on stuff like this. This story was out yesterday, popping on the internet. And all of this broke down from what came out of a basically a hearing on Tuesday, that essentially a police investigator alleged Miller, the teammate Brandon Miller. By the way, Brandon Miller is a Corey. This guy's a lottery pick. Okay. The Alabama basketball team, let's give full disclosure here, they're either number 2 or number 1 in the country right now. They have a shot at a 1 seed. They have a clean shot at a national championship. This Oaks guy, Nate Oaks here, folks. Stupid thing on Windows popped up. This Nate Oaks here could be a Coach of the Year candidate, So they got a lot of big things going, right? Big things popping, and in this case, a little big things are stopping, really. So, so I've got you caught up now. We talked about this last month. We're talking the 15th of January, where Darius Miles the player for Alabama, this was a bench player, asked a woman out, and she turned him down. Later on, he shoots the woman. This is a player, bench player for the Alabama basketball team. He shoots her. He's charged with capital murder. She dies. It's a tragedy, total tragedy. He's got a 5-year-old and everything. And another man is arrested for this homicide. Okay, fast forward to Tuesday. Okay, this is some type of basic preliminary hearing. This is from, I'm going to play a soundbite from Paul Feinbaum, who covers the SEC thoroughly. But also, this is from The Athletic. I tried to read as much information as I possibly could so I wouldn't have some kind of just snap fast judgment based on what we've heard from the Jeffrey Deskovic, interview and reading through his case files. Okay, so a police investigator alleged that Miller, this 5-star player, this draft pick, this lottery pick, okay, alleged that teammate brought Darius Miles the gun that was used in the January 15th fatal shooting of 23-year-old woman. According to law enforcement, Miles texted Miller to bring Miles a gun to the scene, and it was exchanged in Miller's car. Miller's attorney issued a statement. Okay, now, brought the gun there. Now, the backstory to this is essentially the gun was already there. He had left the club. He's coming back to the club. The police are saying the reason why he was not charged, Brandon Miller, the lottery guy, is because he never got out of the car, and they have enough video evidence that it made it look like, plus looking at the text message, plus the video evidence, it looked like that he was not actually active, engaging, having any wherewithal of the situation, other than if somebody at 1:30 in the morning says, "Bring me my gun," I don't think you're going to the shooting range at 1:30 in the morning. And I understand that he's a younger player than the player that's asking him, this Darius Miles, okay? But what really bugs me is, so we know that. We know that January, the weekend after January 15th, we know that a Alabama player, this Miles, was arrested. We know that. Okay? Now, what irritates me is this Coach Oaks here. He goes out and makes this callous statement here. He says, "I'm not here to make excuses, but I want to make it clear I didn't have any details from the hearing that morning." Okay. He said, "I sincerely apologize." So he comes out and he told reporters, this is the coach after this all came out in the court. This is the coach. He tells reporters Tuesday that the team can't control anything anybody does outside of practice when asked about the Miller situation. He says, quote, "Nobody knew that was going to happen," Oaks said. "College kids are out. Brandon hasn't been in any type of trouble, nor is he the type of in any type of trouble in this case." Then he says, "Wrong spot, wrong time." And then, of course, he got a lot of heat from that, including from this girl's stepfather. Like I said, she's young, 23. She got a 5-year-old herself, who no longer have her mother. So that was a very callous thing. But my thing is, we were just talking. He says basically, this is what he says. He said, "We're informed by law enforcement of the other student athletes being in the vicinity, and law enforcement has repeatedly told us that no other student athletes were suspects. They were only witnesses." So that was back in January. Okay. So basically, bury your head in the sand and not investigate anymore. I just do not buy that from the coach. Okay. So he didn't go, he didn't have any wherewithal, this Oaks, this coach here, nor did the athletic director. And I know they get advice from their legal counsel to say, okay, what were any of my players involved in this? He could have asked this back in January. Were any of my players involved in this, or are they just witnesses? And soon as he said Brandon Miller, whether it's Miller's fault or not, whether he gets criminally charged, and I understand what the law enforcement side of it is, but when you bring a guy a gun at 1:30 in the morning, by the way, Miller is looking at an NBA draft in June. This is 6 months from now. He's going to be a millionaire. Somebody calls me. They say, hey, man, you need to bring my piece down here, blah, 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 blah. Or text me. I'm going to call him and say, what the bleep you talking about, man? You're not going to get me hemmed up in a bunch of nonsense, okay? I don't care how much older you are than me. But now he just goes along. So why didn't the coach say something about it? Why didn't they look into this situation? Because he didn't want to see it, because he is a draft lottery pick, and he's looking at a contract extension. Oaks, this coach here, Nate Oaks, and he got the contract extension a few weeks after this. And he plays the guy. By the way, he played last night, scored 40 points. They won the game. After all this, it came out. And so then he buries his head in the sand, Oaks does. The athletic director buries his head in the sand and extends Oaks. And Brandon Miller's still playing on the team. Meanwhile, this 23-year-old woman's dead. This is not a DU. And like I said, I try to give Alabama the benefit of the doubt. Early on yesterday, I'm reading, I'm listening. And it looks like the lack of institutional control. At some point, you got to say, somebody's dead. She's not going to come back. This is not a bar fight. This is not a DUI, okay? If Brandon does not drive to that facility in the Strip, if he does not drive there, that woman's alive today. This 5-year-old has his mother. Cooler heads prevailed the next day. It's Sunday. You kind of calm down. F that chick. Let's move on. Instead, he brings the gun there, even though he's not charged. Mike Price Pickles wasn't charged. Who's Mike Price? 21 years ago, Alabama head coach there. He was hired. He used the company card. He went to a topless bar, and he supposedly got $1,000 in escorts. He was never criminally charged. Even though I think that's illegal, right? He was never criminally charged. But you know what Alabama did? They fired him. They said that's embarrassment to the university. Okay? What Oaks should have done, instead of worried about his own career, he said, listen, man, I know you're about to go to the NBA. I know you haven't been charged, but we got to hold our teammates accountable. And if you don't drive that gun there, loyalty or not, this person's still alive. I've got to cut you from the team, man. I've got to cut you from the team. And the fact that he didn't do that, he should be fired. That coach, that's lack of institutional control. He should be fired. And that AD who extended him, he should be fired. I'm not saying anybody should be charged, but you'll get another coach. You'll be fine. Alabama, they hired Mike Shula. Then they got Nick Saban. He's a legend at the football. You'll be fine. That girl, you're not going to get this woman's life back. That's embarrassing. That I don't care if it was Tennessee, Vanderbilt. I'm out of Nashville. That's embarrassing. You cut the rope right there. You cut. Yeah, I'm sorry. I appreciate what you're doing. I know you're going to get another job. There's been coaches fired for less. Trust me. The Ole Miss coach, he got another job. He'll be fine. But you're so caught up in the winning. This woman's dead. This one, and I'm sure maybe he was a little intimidated by the guy. That there's not an excuse. Hey, man, that's life, dude. That's life. There's people that are good people that go out here and they have too much to drink and they run over a kid in the parking lot. Well, you still got to pay for it, right? You still have to pay for that crime. And I try, like I said, I listened all day. Listen, here's Paul Fonbon yesterday. He makes a good point here. Play this soundbite if I can get it played up.
Ask a couple of things. It's 1:30 at night. Miller had already been to the club. It wasn't. I mean, if you and I are out on the Strip, and you leave, and I text you and say, bring my gun, you're not thinking you're probably bringing it so I can go to the range at 1:30 in the morning and work on my marksmanship.
That's Paul Fonbon. And usually he's pretty sympathetic towards Alabama. But at some point, you know, you got to just look at it and say, hey, man, it is what it is. There's consequences. Just because it's not legal doesn't mean it's not against our ethics. You know, reading more about this, and now I find out that the stepdad's ticked off. The mom is upset of this woman. Obviously, it's senseless crime. They're probably going to sue him, you know. But everything I read from the NBA side, he's going to be drafted. He'll be drafted. He's a lottery pick. He'll be a top 5 pick. Yeah, and Pickle Steven says it's not what it used to be. I mean, yeah, have some integrity. They had integrity 20 years ago when you fired Mike Price. They could have fined him for that money and got it back and maybe suspended him a game. They could have fined him a pretty healthy price and kept the whole thing in-house and kept Mike Price, but they didn't, you know? And Pickle says, was that Okaloosa County? Yeah, they'll be all right. And Carlo sent me something about a Georgia player. I'm not. The worst, the family's involved. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she's got a 5-year-old, and the 5-year-old was looking forward to his mom coming home that night, you know? And, I mean, it's a tragedy, and Miller will be fine, but I just don't like the way Alabama – I mean, just that look the other way mentality. And even the AD's like, I know this looks bad. Yeah, it does, man. It does. And if I'm in charge, I appreciate everything you've done, but this is a big one. This is a big one right here. So I'm sure there's going to be some, and maybe the Alabama, the upper brass will do the right thing, you know, but I doubt it. And you know, I don't care if it's whose team. I mean, if it's my team, hey, look, man, Tennessee players have robbed people, been kicked off the team. Carlos, you remember when Lane Kiffin was coaching there? There were some really good players. They robbed a guy at a convenience store. Well, hey, you messed up, man. You messed up. The law should go for you, apply to you just like it applies to me, Everyday Joe. You know, it should not be different because you play a sport. It's bad, you know. She shouldn't have been at the club at 1:30 in the morning, Pickle says. And that's probably what the Alabama fan base is saying. But anyways, it is what it is, man. All righty then. The Rams. So Bobby Wagner got cut. You know, I was reading this story. Wagner was cut. And trying to see where my notes are here. And, you know, Sean McVay, I can see why that he has contemplated retirement twice. You know, before he was cut this afternoon, Bobby Wagner, linebacker, really good linebacker. He's only 32. He'll get picked up. But it's a linebacker, and I keep telling you guys that position, not unless you're in a situation like the Ravens, it is a situation here where it's just not a position I pay a lot of money to. Long story short, he's been cut. The Rams, you know, I could see, like I said, Sean McVay has been so successful. This guy was, you know, he was hired back in 2017. All right. 30 years old. He was an offensive coordinator under Kyle Shanahan in his 20s when he was at with the Washington, then Redskins, going back to 16, you know. And so this guy, his grandfather put together the 49ers in the 80s. Mr. McVay, and he just recently died, by the way. He just recently passed. But so McVay and his dad was a player, college player. So he's 2 generations down. So he kind of got on the fast track. And so he comes into 2017, 30 years old, and goes to 2 Super Bowls, multiple playoffs, wins a Super Bowl, and everybody's wondering why he is contemplating retirement or stepping away from the Rams the last 2 years in a row. And it never dawned on me, speaking of Alabama, that he's been so successful at such a young age that he's got the kind of problems and stress that Saban had. Nick Saban, Alabama's football coach, has at 70. Twice his age, more than twice his age. Turnover, think about it, guys. Turnover in coaches every single year. Defensive coordinator goes here. Offensive coordinator goes there. Defensive coordinator goes here. He's got just a slew of and he can't handle it like a Saban because he simply just don't have the years of experience. And this article states that they had 11 different offensive linemen looks there and at one time last year. And like I said, they're a team. They're real top heavy, and you're constantly changing coaches. And being that young, he wasn't in tune with every position. He's well read and all that, but he wasn't in tune for every position like a normal 45, 50-year-old head coach with 10, 20, 15 more years experience in him, right? But so there's this big article about it, and now I know why this team they're over the cap here, by the way. They're over the cap, and he just now they're 15 million over. I just talked about the Titans yesterday. They were 23 million over. They're already under 11 million under and counting. They're going to be okay. But I think his biggest issue, other than all this other stuff that McVay's been under, is the fact that Stafford, they extended him all the way up to 26. And his cap hit next year is going to be pretty good. It's going to be 20 million, but it goes up to 49, 50, 49. This guy's like 37 years. He's going to be up there, 37, 38 years old. He's had the elbow problem. He's had the interception problem. And McVay's seeing all this stuff. And he's looking at this. They haven't drafted it. They haven't used the first round pick with the Rams since 2016. That was Aaron Donald. They traded away. I'm looking at all of their picks. So basically, they're in a retooling mode. I wouldn't necessarily call it a rebuild. They've got a second round, third round, and about 4 6 rounds through compensatory. Les needs a good general manager. But my whole point is, actually, I probably would have stepped away. Remember, John Madden stepped away at a young age. John Madden stepped away. John Gruden, now he got fired, but he could have got other job offers. He stepped away. Sean Payton was 58. He stepped down because of cap issues. I probably would have, but I felt like he probably felt the guilt trip of not wanting to do this because he got so much early success. He came back. I don't know how good. The guy may retire for a much longer time now. But I'll say this. Guy's a good coach. Pickles calls them techno geeks, but he's a good schemer. He understands. He's made a lot of coaching changes too, by the way. He made quite a bit of coaching changes. He understands that he has to put people who are older, more experienced in other positions. And I think he'll go back and start doing that. Remember, he hired Wade Phillips. He hired Wade Phillips when he first got that job, be defense coordinator. Wade Phillips older than close to his granddad's age, and now he's working with Wes Phillips. That's Wade Phillips' son. So a lot of nepotism in the NFL. Was it Alan Perez, guy I had on yesterday? He's wanting me to do a show with him on Saturday, talk about their draft picks and everything. But yeah, if it's me, listen, man, you got the Super Bowl. You still got a star player there in Jalen. I'd trade Jalen Ramsey. Ramsey's still in his prime. You probably get a first round pick back, if not an early second. I would give a first round pick. He's a lockdown corner. He's still got plenty left in the tank. I would do that. And they're about like Tennessee. They're going to have to go offensive line as well in the draft. But hey, the guy's a good coach. They had to get rid of Bobby Wagner. They missed on Allen Robertson. I kind of had a gut feeling about them last year. Allen Robertson, I had a feeling he wasn't quite. He kind of reminded me last year of Julio Jones the year before that with Tennessee. It's like, man, is he faking these injuries because he's on a bad team with Chicago, or is the guy really just banged up at this type of time of year, and maybe he's getting closer on the back end of his career and getting injured more often than not, and maybe you want to take a flyer on giving him a contract, and that's what happened. You throw in that, plus you throw in the fact that their leading receiver there, Cooper Kupp, got hurt. But they're going to be an interesting story to follow. I don't think they're going to win that division next year. I don't think they're – but after reading this article and looking at that Wagner thing, I wouldn't be surprised if McVay didn't step away again after this year. He'd get a good TV job, come back refreshed. Guy's 37, come back at like 41, get your choice of job, a lot of good. There's 7 openings on the average every year in the NFL. It just is what it is. Carlos says he has a problem beating Shanahan. Well, he's got a ring. Shanahan does not. And that's what I'm saying if I'm McVay. I'm saying checkmate. And you're right. I want to say they really had their number for a while, the 49ers. 49ers had their number for a while, but McVay's got that ring, and Shanahan's pretty ticked off about it. Pickle says the Rams were the best team money could buy. Yeah, they put together a money team here, and quite frankly, a lot of those players, that was during Jeff Fisher's era. Aaron Donald. Jeff Fisher drafted Aaron Donald. They did do some. They got some good free agents there. They made aggressive trades. They signed Andrew Whitworth at left tackle. They went out and aggressively went out and got a Jalen Ramsey, best cornerback on the market there. It is a model. It's a model. It's a model that the Bills tried to do when they went out and got Von Miller, when they went out and got Stephon Diggs, who now wants out of Buffalo. It is a model. And again, if you win, that's great. But this is the cleanup part of it. It's like a degree, right? It's like a degree. That degree's still there. That ring is still there. Cal Shanahan's 45. He don't have one. They're both crazy young for NFL coaches. So I do commend it for it. But I'll say this. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't step away. With his grandfather dying. He said he wants to spend time with this beautiful wife he's got. And I saw her on Hard Knocks. She is very attractive. So anyways, Bobby Wagner, who needs a linebacker? A lot of great teams out there looking for a team that needs that player, maybe a Cincinnati. They got a lot of money. Somebody like that. I could see him going to a team like that they've got the money and they're in their Super Bowl window. Keep an eye out for that one. All righty then. Okay, here's one for you, Carlos. LaShawn McCoy throws Eric Bieniemy under the bus. Former Kansas City Chief LaShawn McCoy. This is what he said about Eric Bieniemy, new coordinator for the Washington Commanders. He says, quote, "What's his value? What makes him a good offensive coordinator?" McCoy asked FS1. He said, "The problem is a lot of these people that go on social media, he should be the guy for the job. They haven't played there." He said, "I've been there in the rooms where he's coaching, and he has nothing to do with the pass game at all when he plays at or designated. That's Andy Reid," is what McCoy says. Then McCoy doubles down and says, There's nothing that makes Bieniemy special. He says, when you talk about offensive coordinators, I can tell you what makes Brian DeBall with the Giants a very good coordinator," McCoy said. He said, "I can tell you what about Andy Reid or Doug Peterson." He says, "But Eric Bieniemy, what makes him good, when we watch film of practices and we correct the wide receivers, the running backs, the quarterbacks, he doesn't talk in there. Andy Reid talks in there." And Bieniemy didn't seem bothered. So he's throwing Bieniemy under the bus. Maybe him being a former running back, maybe he got on to McCoy, and McCoy's got some bad blood. But here, and Carlos says that is true. He was cooked as a player. He was he was washed up as a player, and I think he snuck in there and got a ring there at the end a couple of years ago. So here's what Eric Bieniemy. Here's his response.
LaShawn McCoy is a future Hall of Fame runner. Okay, everybody's entitled to their own position, to their own comments and how they feel. When it's all said and done with, I think that's all I have to say, because he's entitled to his own opinion. That's life. Okay, you got good, you have bad. You know, it does not impact me in any way, because one thing that you learn when you're in this position, you have to learn to eliminate distractions. All right, my job is to focus on the now. Everything outside these walls has no impact on Eric Bieniemy moving forward.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Thank you.
So he goes third person there at the end, Carlos. So he's starting to get his swagger. Now I'll say this. Now Patrick Mahomes did speak up. I know you all wondering what did Mahomes say, and let me find what he said. I had a Mahomes quote here. Okay, here Patrick Mahomes. He says there should be no coach. There should be no question on how great of a man or coach Bieniemy is. His leadership, he has a direct impact on the player. The person I am today, 10 years learning under one of the greatest coaches of all time, and I cannot wait for him to continue to prove the doubters wrong. Now, that was from Mahomes. Now, he uses 10 years. I forgot that he coached there 10 years. Now, you got to think about it. I see why the Commanders hired the guy. I mean, if you're working under Andy Reid for 10 years, all you got to do is watch the film. Watch the film. What is he doing? What makes them special is that red zone, is their red zone offense, is some of their moving and shifting. Now, I know Sam Howell's not Patrick Mahomes, but a lot of it is the shifting. It is finding speedy players, getting them in the right spot, getting the mismatches. I don't think, I think that he's going to bring something to the table for the Commanders. There's no way I can just say that he's going to be a total bust. The Commanders have above average offensive line. We talked about this last week. Logan Thomas, they've got Terry McLaurin, a true number one receiver. That Johan Dotson is just scratching the surface of his talent at the other receiver there. And, of course, you have a gadget guy, and I can't remember his name, but you have a solid three there. You have a power back there and Robertson, and you have Gibson there. He is your pass catching running back there. So there's a lot that this guy can do, and it's not a shortage of talent. Did I mention he's got a defense on the other side? So I do think that there's going to be a level of success. I just don't know how much, you know. McCoy didn't even get an All-Star or Pro Bowl. He had a game or two, but come on, man. Yeah, Washington really needs a quarterback. Yeah, that's what they really need, Pickles. And now McCoy was a great player. I don't know if, he may have overtaught McCoy. Is that what you're saying, Carlos? He was a great player when he was with Philly. Now, he was an excellent player there. I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer like Eric Bieniemy said. I don't know if he's maybe Bieniemy's just trying to take the high road. I hope the best for the guy. I think there's going to be some level. Are they going to look like the Chiefs? Probably not. But I do think they're going to be better than what they've been. You know, and that if you're a Commanders fan, that's all you can ask for. You know, that's all you can ask for. And Pickle says he was great for fantasy. Yeah, he could catch the ball in the backfield. He ran between the tackles. He reminded me somewhat of Marshawn Lynch, if you ask me, guys. You know, but it is what it is. I mean, he just taking a lot of shots there, and sour grape. Maybe they got in an argument or something like that. I mean, McCoy. He's no saint. I remember he got into it with some cops in is it Philadelphia police or Pittsburgh? He almost got into a whole lot of trouble one time. Also, I'll put it that way with McCoy. He's no saint by no means. Good fantasy player though. Pickles, you're right. Okay, the XFL. Now I wanted to say something about this the other day, but there was other news here. And you know, I'll say this. The XFL, you probably shouldn't have started like the week after the Super Bowl. We're still kind of getting football out of our system. We're still talking about the Super Bowl per se, guys. But I will say this. I understand that the ratings are going to be bad. You know, I've said this about these football leagues, these semi-pro leagues. By the way, I'm a big fan of the Big Three semi-pro basketball league. I don't waste my time on stuff that I'm not really truly into and a big fan. But the XFL, there was a article here out of Pro Football Talk, and they're saying with 4 games over ABC and ESPN this past weekend, the viewership dropped by at least 50% from the same windows in 2020 when the XFL returned for a season that ultimately was cut short due to the pandemic. You know, and I'll say this. And the truth to be told here, they're putting them at different times. They're not putting them in prime time. They're not putting them in prime time like the USFL. The USFL is pretty good. USFL is pretty good. Now, listen to some of these names. And you have to be consistent, and you have to have appointment TV. Now, the Big Three, Corey, is starting to become more consistent. And I'm going to try to get Nancy Lieberman before the Big Three starts. I'm friends with her on Facebook. She's one of the coaches of the Big Three. I digress. I'm going to try to get her on the program sometime or another before they start back in, I think, July, per se. But, I mean, you got guys on here like Bob Stoops, okay, former Oklahoma coach, Hines Ward. Yes, the Hines Ward, former Pittsburgh, great wide receiver for the Steelers. Hines Ward's a coach. And, you know, there was a great little storyline here this past weekend. A.J. McCarron, he's mic'd up and stuff. McCarron was a former Alabama player, also a backup in the NFL. The last time he played in the NFL was back in 2020. and he had an emotional moment. His sons, they're very little, but they can understand what's going on. They're like 5 and 6 years old, 7 years old, and he was talking during halftime, saying that they've seen some of my games at Alabama on YouTube and seen some of my pro games on YouTube and everything, and they really wanted to see me come back and play. And he came back and played in that game. Game wasn't great, but he came back and played Saturday for the first time in 3 years. He'd been out of football, folks, since 2020. A.J. McCarron. And so he comes back and wins the game, and he's emotional afterwards. Very good moment there. Not a great game, but the names are familiar, And Carlos said it's simply because it's new. It's new. The rules are a little different, but the formations are the same as the NFL. The quarterback, this idea that it's a major drop off, it's just not that. It's just not the case. I want to say I'm friends with a guy on Facebook who used to play for the Steelers. He played for the first XFL. His last name's Maddox. See, Drew Maddox or whatever. His last name's Maddox. And this guy played for the first XFL, when the Vince McMahon won it. It's like 2001, right? And he wins the championship. He wins their only year. He wins the championship. Well, this guy later becomes the starting quarterback of the Steelers. He becomes the starting quarterback of the Steelers for like 3 or 4 years. And then they draft a guy named Ben Roethlisberger. Then Roethlisberger takes over. This past year, Tommy Maddox. Thank you, Pickles. Tommy Maddox. Good call, Wall State. Tommy Maddox. Think about this. I guarantee you guys, somebody in this league will be playing in September in the NFL. It never fails. It never fails. Turpin, guys, the kick returner for the Cowboys, can run like the wind blows. He came from the USFL last year. And that league is coming back now. That one's coming up around summertime. The XFL, I think The Rock owns part of it or something like that. He's got a group of people. The graphics look good. The uniforms look good. The players were familiar with Bob Stoops. I liked it. He's like, I don't know if I'll come back to college, but Bob Stoops said he likes the whole setup. Hines Ward, what other? It was a bunch of coaches here, that, the Pro Football Talk is saying, well, the numbers have lagged behind. The USFL had 3 million and AAF had, Mike Florio says the AAF was the, I forgot what that stands for, but it was basically the son that started the AAF. His dad was a big head honcho at NBC Sports. The guy's 33 years old, born on third base, way over his head. He was born on. So long story short, the AAF went down in 2019. And, that guy, that big head honcho Pickles, Ebersol. Thank you. Dick Ebersol. His son, Ebersol Pickles, started the AAF, and 33, 34, well, then Sean McVay type, way over his head. So that's why they went down. And as far as the XFL, the pandemic caused them to go out of business, and Vince McMahon was doing some shady dealings, from my understanding, and there's some lawsuits involved, but this seems a little bit cleaner. And I'll tell you what, the USFL, one of the networks, I want to say Fox owns part of that. And quite frankly, I don't care what the haters say. USFL last year was good too. all these leagues look better to me than the Arena Football League. And the Arena was fine. I've been to Arena games. Kurt Warner came from the Arena League. Okay, I've been to ones here in Nashville, and they're okay. But these leagues look better than the Arena leagues. So again, somebody's going to get picked up here. I was talking to a guy at work today. He was like, "Man, the Titans cut Randy Bullock. What are they going to do?" I said, "Dan, you could find a kicker anywhere. You can find you can find an Australian soccer player. You know, you could find a. Don't be surprised if a kicker's kicking in the NFL from these leagues. You know, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch the XFL. I like semi-pro. I think it's way underrated, and you simply have to make this appointment TV, and that's why I want this show to be like that. It's consistent, day in and day out, same time. Pickle says, "Thank Dick Ebersol." Yeah, and his son, that guy, never see his face no more. That's it. Yeah. There Charlie Ebersol, Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, you know. So these are big time coaches, man. I'm surprised Bob Stoops didn't want to come back to the NFL or come back to college. Now his dad had a heart attack in 1988 and died on the field. He was a coach there. And that's why he stepped away from Oklahoma, got bored, wanted to come back. Now he's in the XFL, and he knows it's hanging on by a shoestring like a lot of these leagues are. But quite frankly, I don't see how the Arena League lasted, 10, 12 years, guys. So there is some kind of model for these semi-pro leagues to come about, if you ask me. And it looks like, folks, that I could have milked that Alabama story a little bit farther, but I didn't. So if you guys like the show, share the show. I'll be back tomorrow. Carlos, I'll get your opinion on that stuff with Alabama. I just think that, you got to have some kind of integrity here. You can find another coach. It's not the end of the world. It seems like when these schools do this, it always seems to come back, it always seems to come back and bite you. Somebody was calling to Paul Feinbaum. They said, "What about Art Briles?" And then Paul said, "No, he's like, I don't think this is bad as Art Briles." That's a coach for Baylor, where there was a lot of sexual assault allegations going on with the players and all that stuff. But it just seems like that's the thing. I mean, I'm not saying this is bad as Penn State, although there's a death involved. There's something about the program. The program's bigger than everything. Just forget everything. Just forget all ethics, morals, look the other way. It's just about the next game, win the next game. And it just seems like that's bad karma for me, man. I'll just end the show with that. Again, if you guys like the show, share the show. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. I'll talk to Carlos. I'll ask you about this stuff. Plus, I want to get your opinion, Carlos, on these Major League Baseball. We got the Major League Baseball season coming up, pitchers and catchers. Now, it felt like baseball season out here in Nashville. Here today, it felt about 81 degrees, 78, 80 degrees. Felt really nice here. Good baseball weather. But bringing in the pitch clock, eliminating shifting, that's going to be great. And I'm hearing that Ghost Runner, I might have looked that back up, but the Ghost Runner thing, if you go into extra innings, I thought they did away with that. According to John, who's a guest on last week, he said that they're bringing that back to speed the game up. So that's something I'll definitely want to get into. Pickle says Bryles was banned from the NCAA. I think he could have came back. I think he may have been on like a show cause thing. Yeah, I mean, Tennessee did the right thing. You know, as stupid as that looked, with what Bruce Pearl did at the University of Tennessee, for just lying about a picnic, the fact that he told the parents to lie about the picnic, the cover-up's worse than the crime in Bruce Pearl. But Bruce Pearl embarrassed Tennessee. He admits, hey, I screwed up, and they fired him for it. But it was embarrassment. Maybe they should have just suspended him. Either way, you just can't overlook stuff like that. There's certain things that embarrass you that last on for years and years and years, I mean, I could go on about Urban Meyer in Florida, Urban Meyer in Ohio State. I mean, they win, but when you start ignoring stuff and pushing stuff under the rug constantly, that rub becomes worse and worse and worse. And we know about Aaron Hernandez, what he knew going on, all the fights and the trouble. And, he's talking out of one side of his mouth, acting like the holier than thou. Yeah, you got Tim Tebow, but, man, you got a lot of troublemakers on that team too. And now we're starting to find that out several years later. So it is what it is. It does leave a mark, Love does leave a mark. All right, guys, I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, here on Sports Scope.